This is the NLPC Report.
Hey, this is Luke Perlot. I'm the Associate Director of the Corporate Integrity Project at National Legal and Policy Center. Today, we're just going to go over what NLPC does, specifically our Corporate Integrity Project, some of the corporate activism campaigns that we've been running. So to start, I'm just going to pass it over to my colleague, Paul Chesser. He's going to introduce NLPC's Corporate Integrity Project and talk a little bit about how he ended up working on the project.
Hey, everybody. I'm Paul Chesser. I am the director of the Corporate Integrity Project for National Legal and Policy Center, or NLPC. I've been affiliated with National Legal and Policy Center for 12, 13 years now in different capacities over the years, writing, researching, blogging, mostly focused on corporations and their influence on the political realm and their inappropriate involvement in different political issues such as climate change, social issues. And so I had done that for several years, 9 or 10 years. And then a few years ago, our chairman, Peter Flaherty, had really seen a need, identified a need to become more ambitious and aggressive with our shareholder activism. Peter had been doing shareholder proposals, appearing at annual meetings at major corporations, ones you've heard of, Walmart, Alphabet, the parent of Google, Boeing, and presenting shareholder proposals to try to influence boards of directors, CEOs to change behaviors, basically. And that's what shareholder activism is. But he had only been doing it on a limited basis because he runs an organization. He raises money and connects with donors and directs overall the organization. He's been doing it for, I believe, 33 years. So he wanted to expand the Corporate Integrity Project, and that's when he said we got our heads together, and he decided, let's bring Paul on board completely to just do shareholder activism and other associated projects. And so back in 2021, in October, we took on a whole suite of shareholder proposals, whereas before we'd only been doing 2 or 3 of them. That first year, we did 24 of them. At major corporations, like I said, Walmart, all the big tech companies, Home Depot, Apple. So it was a good first year, and we basically sought to address governance issues and sought accountability with regard to charitable contributions by companies and lobbying expenditures, and also trying to address issues of chairman and CEOs being the same person and seeking a division of power and responsibilities with regard to corporate leadership. So the last couple of years, we've delved more specifically into issues. So that's what we'll be talking about in the podcast here. But that's how my progression has gone with NLPC and being involved in expanding the Corporate Integrity Project. Prior to that, I've just been an activist and researcher, journalist in conservative-leaning think tanks. I'm based in North Carolina. NLPC is based in the DC area, and we're like everything today. People are spread out, working from home, and just trying to be more effective in their work. So. Anyway, that's my mini story. And how about you, Luke? How about you talk about a little bit about yourself and your experience and how you got involved with the Corporate Integrity Project?
Yeah, appreciate it, Paul. We got a lot of experience between you and Peter, a lot of institutional knowledge. I think like Peter was saying, I mean, NLPC was one of the first groups that was doing this shareholder activism from the right. So definitely kind of an early mover in this space. But me, I'm relatively much newer to conservative shareholder activism. I got in touch with NLPC back in 2022. I was in my senior year of schooling at Liberty University, studying finance and economics, and I was running this podcast and newsletter called Main Street Insiders. And it was giving a conservative take on economics and finance and investing, talking a lot about issues like BlackRock, ESG, DEI, China, forced labor, these kinds of issues that were, very much aligned with what NLPC was doing with its shareholder activism. And we actually interviewed Paul for one of our podcast episodes. And that was the start of the relationship. And then Paul, was giving me some part-time work, allowing me to kind of do some work supporting NLPC's activism campaigns. And then after I graduated, they brought me on full-time, and we haven't looked back. So it's been a blur, lots of fun corporate campaigns that we've been working on. And with Paul and Peter on the team, tons of experience to kind of rely on, years of activism, but, there's kind of a synergy, I think, that comes with having, what Peter says, he likes to find activists at heart. And I think there's a synergy there when you have a team full of those people. So it's been a lot of fun over the past couple of years, and we're still pedal to the metal. Lately, we've been working on this Microsoft proposal. I can start by kind of talking about what we're doing with our AI proposal. And then Paul's been really spearheading our work going after Reid Hoffman, who would be, former one of the LinkedIn co-founders, is on the board of Microsoft after they were acquired. But to start, one of the shareholder proposals we've been doing at Microsoft, sort of back up even further, this is one of our primary tools for shareholder activism at a company, is to file a shareholder proposal, which is then put on the proxy statement for all the other shareholders to vote on. And these become tools not only to bring these other issues before shareholders, but to bring them before the general public. Because when you're able to put an issue on the proxy statement and bring it before the public, it generates a lot of media attention. So you're really able to drive the conversation around this company, around kind of specifically ethical or governance activities that they may be engaging in, and how shareholders want to weigh in, how they want to kind of change the company. So at Microsoft, an issue we're concerned with is their AI, their data ethics. How are they handling user data? How are they using this data to train their AI models? Are there potentially ethical concerns that they may be using our data for improper purposes? A lot has been made of Microsoft's relationship with OpenAI, the AI giant behind ChatGPT. And Microsoft is very closely intertwined with OpenAI, to the point that people have, accused Microsoft of even, taking over OpenAI without actually doing so, just because of the amount of control they wield over their board and their executives. And OpenAI has been accused of scraping the web to take user data, your health records, your social media records, personal information. A lot of that's online. And OpenAI takes that and they use it to train their AI models. OpenAI recently appointed, the former director of the National Security Agency. Under his watch, there were scandals with how the government was using the NSA's capabilities to spy on citizens. Well, the director of the NSA, he's now on OpenAI's board, working with Microsoft. They've been sued by the New York Times for copyright infringement, among others. They've got many lawsuits beginning to mount up, which could be worth billions of dollars for going out into the web, scraping, pulling these copyrighted works, pulling books that are copyrighted, films, scripts, etc., and using those to train those AI models, even though they don't own those works. So as you just kind of begin to see these ethical concerns mounting, another example being that they have this AI recall feature that Microsoft tried to roll out, which would have taken screenshots of everything you do on your computer and sent that to Microsoft so that they could use that data to train their model. Again, it's like some 1984 Big Brother stuff. And shareholders are pretty concerned. So we brought this proposal at Microsoft asking them, hey, we want you to kind of give us some more disclosure about what kind of data you're taking and how you plan to use it, and what safeguards you have in place to make sure that user data is not being used unethically. So that's kind of one of our big concerns in this big tech era. You see it a lot. People were really concerned with the social media censorship, but we think this is really just the next front in kind of the big tech control of society. And so that's an example of an issue we're really, really worried about, but we also will go after specific executives or director candidates, specific people in positions of power at these major companies who we think are particularly ripe for an activism campaign, people whose names you probably don't know, but we think you should know because of a lot of just kind of the dark activities they've been doing. So Paul's been working on that with Reid Hoffman, and Paul, I'll let you go into more detail.
Before I get to that, I wanted to just make a comment or two about your AI proposal, Luke. I think it's really a great next step with what we've done with big tech companies. When you said big brotherism and so forth, spying on citizens, that's really a strong approach to how we can hold these tech companies accountable. And, the first couple of years that we brought proposals, going back to 21, 22, 23 with Apple, Alphabet, Meta, Twitter, back when it was a public company, we addressed some of this technology. And we had a proposal at 3 of those companies, at least 3, maybe 4. Apple as well. Where we asked them to disclose where government had made requests to these companies to censor their users, to take down information. And as we know well, the censorship regime has been very active, very, very, aggressive in censoring specifically conservative voices. Meta admitted to it openly. Mark Zuckerberg, within the past year, basically spilled his guts over how big tech has been doing that. So following up on those censorship proposals, going into the AI thing, where big tech is continually just shifting into a different approach to the censorship regime, and what's going to prevent government from coming to them then and say, hey, show us what you've collected for your AI models, for training your AI models. And I don't see how they can't be in violation of privacy rights. And so it'll be interesting to see how the new Trump administration handles this. So, Luke, where else were we planning to introduce this AI proposal? What other companies?
Yeah, we're planning to introduce it at a lot of the big tech companies. So we've already introduced it at Apple, but Alphabet, Meta, probably Amazon will all be companies that we're eyeing. And yeah, you raise a good point with, I think often people look at these companies and think, oh, they're acting independently when they choose to, censor dissident conservative voices, or when they choose to collect data on users, but oftentimes it's not. Oftentimes it is top down. And that's kind of what we highlight with that relationship with the NSA, but also if you look at Microsoft, they're one of the largest defense contractors when it comes to tech. We wrote a notice of exempt solicitation, which is like a proxy memo with the SEC, almost like an op-ed in support of this proposal. And that was one of the points we mentioned, that billions of dollars in contracts from the federal government, often without a competitive bidder. Meaning the federal government is one of Microsoft's largest customers, if not their largest. And that gives them a lot of leverage over Microsoft. If they say, hey, this contract's in jeopardy for $15 billion, if you're not willing to kind of throw us a bone back in terms of, we want access to your user data, or et cetera. So that's a very good point, that kind of it's not just about how much data these big tech companies have or how they're using it, but also what is their relationship with the federal government? Is there kind of a conflict of interest there?
Right. So good work on that. As you started to bring up, let me just briefly get into the weeds a little bit on an additional component that you briefly introduced about shareholder activism. So when we introduce shareholder proposals, the SEC rules are that we can only present it in 500 words, right? So we present it in 500 words, which really forces us to omit a lot of information that we could include. And then the company, if they publish it in their proxy statement, if it gets through the rule process, they get unlimited words to basically dispute, debunk, refute, oppose our proposals or any proponent's proposals. So what we also do at NLPC is we follow up with, right in front of the annual meetings, for the benefit of everybody, all the other shareholders, we write more extensive research papers that we are able to submit to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Every company has a docket where all filings are filed on their public system, and the shareholders, investors in those companies will get notified if they're signed up about any of these new filings and any new information that's presented to the SEC about these companies. So that's what we do. So it's an extensive process. It's not just, sending a 500-word piece of paper to the company and speaking for 2 or 3 minutes at the company meeting. There's much more, we are a think tank to a degree, and there's much more substance behind just basically, casting stones up against the headquarters edifice for these major companies. Another thing that we are able to do with these proxy memos, in addition to supporting our own proposals, is weighing in on director nominees. And if we feel like there's a nominee or an existing board member who is being considered for a vote at these annual meetings, we can weigh in support of them. We can weigh in opposition to them. And that's what we've done at Microsoft with Reid Hoffman. Just a brief bio on him. He's the co-founder of LinkedIn. Back in 2016 or 2017, LinkedIn, the social media, business-oriented social media platform, he sold LinkedIn to Microsoft for, billions of dollars. I don't know what the exact figure was.
I think it was 26 billion, yeah. 26
billion
or I believe it was 26 billion was the total sale.
Yikes. Wow. That's even far beyond what I thought it would be. Anyway, Reid Hoffman is a multi-billionaire. Big tech, he's part of the PayPal mafia, an associate of some names that Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel. They're all those Silicon Valley guys are pretty interconnected and know each other. And Bill Gates. And as part of the transaction of selling LinkedIn to Microsoft, Reid Hoffman got a board seat to be put on Microsoft's board. Well, we have a problem with Reid Hoffman, and it has to do with his temperament, his not just his political activism, because a lot of these directors are political activists, and most of them are coming at it from a left progressive approach. The thing about Reid Hoffman is he has exhibited over and over and time again a poor judgment, poor discernment, a vitriol in his rhetoric, often in addressing political issues and specifically political personalities, namely Donald Trump. It's pretty obvious that he has what is commonly known as Trump derangement syndrome. Just basically the big things that are sort of little episodic situations for Reid Hoffman that we've raised concerns with. We've sent 2 letters now to Microsoft's board asking that he either resign or be removed from the company board. And both last year and this year, we have submitted these proxy memos to the Microsoft. For the Microsoft docket at the Securities and Exchange Commission, asking our fellow shareholders to oppose his re-election to the board. One, he was a visitor to Epstein Island, so he's basically was a close associate of Jeffrey Epstein. This was long after Epstein had been convicted of being a child predator with regard to his bringing young women or young girls to Epstein Island for the benefit of for his own sexual proclivities and benefit. Well, Reid Hoffman took a trip down there with his associate Joey Ito. This was during a time when he was raising funds for MIT's Media Lab. Jeffrey Epstein was trying to drum up business. I'm going to have to be vague on how this association worked, and Luke, if you have more familiarity or recall about this, but basically, Epstein was helping raise money for MIT as well, and this is a big project for Reid Hoffman, and Reid Hoffman would introduce Epstein to some of his friends, and one of those was Peter Thiel. And there was one situation where he sent an email to Peter Thiel to try to get a meeting between Thiel and Jeffrey Epstein, where he said, hey, you should meet this guy, Jeffrey Epstein. He's smart, intelligent, kind of fun, a little bit of a perv or perverse. But, you should meet him. And it's basically the purpose was to raise money for MIT. So that's kind of Reid Hoffman exhibiting that he knows some of Jeffrey Epstein's character, and he was not reluctant at all to introduce him to his well-heeled friends. The other, just for the sake of saving time, I'm sorry, do you want to jump in, Luke, there?
Yeah. I was just going to add that he, like you said, he was just kind of acting as this go-between for Silicon Valley and Epstein. So he was the one who was introducing Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or, like you said, Peter Thiel. Many of the tech giants met Epstein through Reid Hoffman. And so that was kind of the core concern. Not to mention, he visited the island. He spent the night at his mansion in New York, where he was known to house child pornography. Very inappropriate relationship with Epstein. And as you mentioned, it's clear that he knew the whole time that Epstein was perverse. You really can't hide behind saying I didn't know. So that's kind of the core of our concern with Epstein. But then I think you were going to go into his political activities.
Yeah, well, so, we hear from the political left often about complaints about dark money. They don't know. We often don't know where the source of the money is behind a lot of political activism and so forth. And so, now we've gotten to the point where dark money comes from both sides. Well, Reid Hoffman has funded a lot of what a lot of people would call fake news. He was behind a dark group that funded this thing called Acronym or the Courier Newsroom, which basically set up a shop in a bunch of local communities as an ostensible local newspaper, but really it was just a propagandizing of Democrat narrative filtered out through these local newspapers, and it made out to be what was supposed to be just local news stories of local interest. Basically was propagandizing. He was behind that. Also, for the sake of time, the big thing is he was at a retreat in Idaho with a bunch of billionaires, and Peter Thiel, as one of the PayPal mafia, was at this same retreat. And, Reid Hoffman has poured hundreds of millions of dollars into opposition against Donald Trump in his campaigns since 2016, all the way up through this current cycle. And it's obvious to everybody he's got this obsession, right? He wasn't as much pro Kamala as he was anti-Trump. And Peter Thiel, a Trump supporter, said, Reid, you really ought to just cool your heels. You're basically making Trump into a martyr, basically figuratively a martyr. Well, Reid Hoffman's response from the audience was, well, gee, I wish I had really made him an actual martyr. This was reported in Puck News. Reid Hoffman has not denied it. He, in fact, he basically acknowledged that he said that and didn't really give an apology for that. He said, "Oh, I was just basically echoing back what a word from the audience. I regret saying that word, but." He really showed his true colors in that he said he had wished Trump was made an actual martyr. This was 2 or 3 days before the assassination attempt. 2 days. So, right. So all this, these are just two of many examples that we cite in an 11-page memo that we submitted to the Securities and Exchange Commission that Reid Hoffman does not belong on the Microsoft board on the second or third largest company in the world. Is so influential, has so much leverage with regard to AI, to big tech. Reid Hoffman has no place being on this board. So, if there's any shareholders of Microsoft watching these messages, this podcast, we ask you to oppose him for the board in addition to supporting our shareholder proposal.
Yeah, I think this discussion is kind of just a good introduction to shareholder activism. And I think it also just kind of shows a lot of people might not be aware of just kind of the depth of the corruption or the unethical behavior at these companies. The fact that someone like Reid Hoffman, just kind of a Epstein associate, just kind of a political is violent political rhetoric, and just kind of a dark person, kind of a Bond villain of sorts, and to see him be on the Microsoft board, I think a lot of people just don't realize that someone like that is still able to gain acceptance in the corporate and business world. But fortunately, NLPC is putting in the work to oppose these people. So.
Right. I just want to add brief context to that also. This is not about his political viewpoints, because Penny Pritzker is also on the Microsoft board. She's very, very left-wing board director. She was President Obama's Secretary of Commerce, big left-leaning donor to Democratic candidates, Democratic causes. We are not asking for her to be removed from the board, because she conducts herself respectfully. She's even-tempered. She's not demonstrated herself to be, excessive in her political activism. So this is really about his temperament, his judgment, and not about who he supported for president or any other political candidates.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a very good introduction to our activities at Microsoft, and also just kind of the project as a whole, the type of work we do. I think it's a good spot to end. But yeah, appreciate it, Paul. Thanks for the in-depth rundown.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank you for watching the NLPC Report. For details on this story and to learn more about the National Legal and Policy Center's mission to expose government and corporate corruption, visit nlpc.org.